Continuing our positional rankings, it's the top second base prospects in all of minor league baseball. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. We're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is made possible by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with every winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. As we've been doing this winter, now that we have wrapped up the entire regular season in the minors, we're going through position by position and naming the top prospects at each position. And second base is a little bit tougher than a lot of the other positions, right? Because so many players start off as shortstops. And eventually, obviously, the odds say that most of them will get moved off of shortstop by the time that they are big leaguers, assuming they make the big leagues. This is what we do on the show. We assume they make the big leagues. And a lot of teams won't officially change their positions. They'll be listed as a shortstop and be playing second base or be playing third base or whatever it might be. And so this episode, more so than a lot of others, is a lot of projection on my part, right? Is looking at a guy, the body of work, watching him on defense, watching tape, things like that, and saying, I think he can stick it short, or I think he's most likely to play a different position. And when you look at prospect rankings, like that is entirely borne out. So let's look at the Baseball America Top 100. As of time of recording, there are 23 players listed as shortstops in the Baseball America Top 100, including 2 in the top 10, Jordan Lawlar and Jackson Holliday. And Jackson Holliday is the number 1 overall prospect, right? When you sort by guys who are listed as second basemen, there is a grand total of 6. The highest of those is number 53, and 3 of those guys are in the 90s. So a lot of what we have to do on this episode, more so than just about any other, is figure out which of these guys listed as shortstops are not going to stay at shortstop. Maybe they get moved in the minors. Maybe they get moved when they get to the majors. Jackson Holliday, if you watched yesterday's show, the Everydayers already know this. We spent the whole first segment just about talking about Jackson Holliday and his power ceiling. I do think at the major league level, he's a second baseman. He's not bad defensively at short. He went through so many levels so quickly that there's an adjustment period, and there's an easy explanation for some of the defensive issues you saw in 2023. He wasn't bad, but it's a scenario where it feels like you're always going to have a better defender than him to play shortstop. If I'm choosing right now Jackson Holliday or Gunnar Henderson to play shortstop, I'm choosing Gunnar Henderson. If I'm choosing Jackson Holliday or Joey Ortiz to play shortstop, I'm choosing Joey Ortiz. And so Jackson Holliday to me is one of those players that can play shortstop if you need him to. But at the major league level, he's a second baseman. He is number 1 on this list. I'm not sure if he's going to be in the thumbnail or not. Depends on who else I can find licensable pictures of. You can go back to yesterday's show. We talked all about his power ceiling, things like that. Go back and reference that to get more about Jackson Holliday. But the number 2 guy on this list for me, and another guy listed at shortstop, but I think you're going to see him get moved. Maybe it's the major league level, maybe it's not, but he's already been playing quite a bit of second base, is Adael Amador of the Colorado Rockies. So was in high A, double A, and a little bit of time in rookie ball, 5 games while rehabbing last year. Got 69 total games. It's a really nice little sample in the minors last year. 287, 380, 495. 12 home runs, 30 extra base hits, 39 walks to 37 strikeouts, and 15 of 20 on stolen bases. Kind of like Holliday. He could play shortstop. Defensively, he is good enough as far as the speed, I think, is above average. The hands and the movement is fine, right? Like, he could get by at shortstop. He's not going to win awards. He's not going to be a contender for Gold Gloves and things like that. But he could fill in for you for a couple weeks if somebody got hurt just fine. But as a second baseman, he's going to defensively be above average. And really, the tool that's lacking defensively for Adael Amador is the arm. I think it's below average. I think it's fringe, probably fringe, 45. And so he could, again, he could get it done. Dansby Swanson doesn't have the best arm in the world, and he won a Gold Glove at shortstop this year. And so, Adael Amador could get it done, but he's going to be better as a second baseman. But he's not here for that. He's here for just the sheer amazing hitting ability that he has. If you're looking at tool grades, right, it's something where he's probably a 70 grade. And understanding that, he broke a bone in his hand. He broke his hamate bone in his right hand. Missed 2 months after surgery. Came back and still did pretty well. Still hit well. When he came back to AA, it was a short sample. This conventional stats weren't great. 143 batting average. But when you watched the at-bats, it was something where you can see the talent that is there. What really impresses me about Adael Amador is, one, switch hitter. He looks really comfortable from both sides. And I feel like for a lot of young players, you don't always see switch hitters that are comfortable from both sides. I do think he's probably a little bit better as a lefty, but he can do both. Reminds me of Ozzie Albies, a guy, similar thing, smaller stature, can do both, but is a little bit better as a lefty. The big difference for me in Adael Amador versus a lot of other really good contact guys, really good hit tool guys, is he is very much willing to take pitches and get deeper into an at-bat without getting stuck in a disadvantage count. I talk about that a lot, about guys who are patient to a fault, and they're waiting so long for a perfect pitch that all of a sudden now they're down 2-2 and they have to expand the zone and they strike out and things like that. He's gotten really good at letting a hittable but suboptimal pitch go by so that he can get a better one, but not trapping himself into a 1-2 count or a 2-2 count and being behind in a pitcher count. Now, and some of the reason he has to do that is because he doesn't have the best power in the world. I think it's going to be average, similar to what we talked about with Jackson Holliday yesterday. So it's going to be 15 to 20 home run power at best. But it's something where he's got enough speed. He's not going to be a massive burner. He was 15 to 20 last year. But again, smaller sample, 69 games because of the injury. But Adael Amador is... The base running instincts are really good. He's going to be able to take extra bases. He's going to line balls into the gap. And to go along with that, it's just he's going to be really hard to strike out. He's going to be really good at getting runners over. He's going to be really good at I think if he's a leadoff hitter, I think he's probably, I'm not going to say he's like Luis Arraez good, but I think he's in that conversation for some of the best batting averages in Major League Baseball, potentially, if he hits his 90th percentile projection here, right? Very impressed with what Adael Amador can do. Think he's very much one of those underrated prospects because he's in Colorado and so many people don't pay attention to the Colorado Rockies, but he's absolutely phenomenal. Very excited to watch him. It was really enjoyable watching him in Spokane. I didn't get to catch a lot of Hartford live. I caught some of it in replays, researching this episode, but very excited to see what he can do. In just a minute, Let's talk about the New York Mets, Luisangel Acuña, as well as the Tampa Bay Rays with Curtis Mead. We'll do that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We are in the thick of the NFL season, and you can score early this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app's incredibly easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, back to our prospect ranking of the best second base prospects in minor league baseball. Luisangel Acuña, traded from the Rangers to the Mets last season, part of the Max Scherzer deal, and really showed, one, again, projecting here, it's pretty confident he's not going to be a shortstop. The question's going to be, does he stay at second base or does he move to the outfield? Something where he has the physical tools to play shortstop. He's fast enough. His arm is good enough. It's more of the actions. It feels like he's going to be second base. He could move to the outfield. He did play some outfield with Texas. Some of that may have been because, obviously, their middle infield's locked up for a decade. He played 4 games with Frisco, so we got 35 innings in the outfield. Fielding percentage wasn't great, but again, it was only 4 innings. But when he came over to the Mets system, he played 25 games at short versus 12 games at second. So they're using him at both, and that's typical. You'll see teams use guys, one, if you keep them at shortstop for longer, they hold value in a trade because you can say, oh yeah, they're shortstops. Whereas if you go ahead and you move them, obviously it's a little bit different. Could play the outfield. Jet Williams could play the outfield. We don't quite know who's going to be at second, who's going to be in the outfield. These guys could move around. But for Acuña, the thing here is, one, things to remember, he's not his brother. Okay? It's a very common thing for people to say, oh yeah, like he's another Acuña. He is not Ronald. They are different players. Ronald plays a lot bigger than his size, right? Ronald, obviously, tons of home runs, had a 40-40 year this year, 40-70 year this year. His brother is not going to come anywhere near that power production, right? The power is probably, it's probably 40 grade, right? On the season, 121 games divided between both organizations. 294, 359, 410. 9 home runs, 39 extra base hits, 52 walks to 106 strikeouts, 57 of 67 on stolen bases. You can see the similarities in the brothers. Like, he's also twitchy, he's also strong, he plays a little bigger than his size, but he just doesn't quite have the home run, I don't think, potential that Ronald has. Some of this is just his swing. He hits the ball on the ground way too much. He hits the ball, or he expands the zone way too much. And one of the biggest things for Ronald Acuña Jr.'s breakout this year was the dramatic cut in his strikeout rate because he significantly stopped chasing like he used to. Got a lot more disciplined at the plate. Maybe this is something he's able to do a little bit later that Luisangel is able to do a little bit later. But there are similarities, but they are different players. It feels like he's really good at going opposite field. He's very good. He's aggressive, but he's very good at not being so aggressive that he takes himself out of the at-bat. He will attack pitches early. He likes to ambush the first pitch. That's something that I noticed when I watch some of his games, as he likes to swing at the first pitch. As long as they're not necessarily expecting that and they throw absolute junk, he's going to go after it. But he is able to be patient, draw a walk. He will foul off multiple pitches with 2 strikes to try to get into at least an even count, if not necessarily stay out of a disadvantage count, at least into a neutral count. Will do walks, things like that. I think that there's a couple different ways you could go with the development here, right? I think with Acuña, you could say, we want you to focus more on the launch angle, stop hitting so many balls on the ground and using your speed to beat it out. And you could try to see what you could get out of him from a power perspective. I really think the better thing to do is let him keep doing what he's doing and wait for the natural development of having him be more selective at the plate and less aggressive early in the count could be the right way to approach his development. So it's really curious to see what he does. But I've got him as a second baseman now because, again, he probably could play short. But one, in his organization, you have a long-term shortstop. And then also, it just feels like he would be average at best at short, but if you move him to second base, he could be above average to a plus defender, as well as moonlight in the outfield. You've got guys on this team that can do both outfield and second base now, so it just continues a trend here for the Mets. Other guy we have right here, right behind Acuña, and it's probably a little bit of bias because his call-up didn't go amazing, is Curtis Mead of the Tampa Bay Rays. So 61 games in AAA last year, 294, 385, 515, 9 home runs, 32 extra base hits, 35 walks to 48 strikeouts, and 4 of 6 on stolen bases. 24 games in the majors, 253, 326, 349, 1 homer, and 5 extra base hits. 7 walks to 21 strikeouts. So the ratio of walks to strikeouts got skewed a lot more in the major league sample. Did not even try to steal a base, and honestly, that's not a big part of his game. He's not a very fast player. Most of his major league time was at third base. He had 16 starts, 19 total appearances there. He appeared 4 times at second. I've seen him play third going all the way back to Double-A, to the Southern League, the Montgomery Biscuits. I don't think he's necessarily that great at third base. It felt like that was more of a necessity than anything. And part of the reason he didn't get extended run at the major league level was because you had a second baseman in Brandon Lowe. Now, Curtis Mead is not here for defense, right? He's not even average on any of the tools that would relate to defense, right? His arm is not good. It is easily below average. I don't necessarily know if he'd have played second base if you still had shifts and he's playing way out in right field. But he's here for offense, okay? It's probably legitimately a 70 grade hit tool. He is probably one of the best, or I guess the most intuitive hitters in the minors. It's a very controlled swing, very calm swing. He can just stroke line drives all day. He doesn't necessarily try to hit a bunch of home runs. I do think if he wanted to, he could probably be 20 to 25 home runs. I think Pipeline and Baseball America both have him as a 60 grade power. And to do that, he's probably going to have to adjust his approach some if he wanted to have 60 grade power. It feels like he's probably 20 to 25 as far as actual power production, which would put him at a 55, I believe, on the tool scale. If you want me to go over that scale and what it correlates to as far as fastball velocity or home run production, things like that, let me know in the comments or tweet at us. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Email us, whatever it might be, and I can put that into an upcoming mailbag before we get into the previews in the spring for all the different minor league systems and the grades and things like that. When I watch Curtis Mead, and again, one of the guys I've seen a lot of, back in Double-A when he got there, in person, as well as watching Montgomery games with my kids. My son loves the Montgomery Biscuits. Something where it feels like he is almost too selective. Going back to that point that I made earlier, it feels like he's almost, like he's really good. The pitch recognition's fantastic, right? But the issue is, it feels like he's waiting for the perfect pitch. And again, the perfect is the enemy of good. And so I think some of that power production could come if he was a little more willing to pull the trigger when he's up 1-0, when he's up 2-0, things like that. But either way, very good hitter. The major league transition is tough. especially for a guy on the Rays that is getting sporadic playtime, especially for a guy like Curtis Mead, who was dealing with injuries. Again, it was a right elbow strain, is why he ended up getting shut down. He should be back for this year. He should be fine. But definitely not going to help the arm strength that was already an issue. I like Curtis Mead a lot. I think he's one of the better hitters on this list. It's like him and Adael Amador side by side. The question is, how long is the transition for him at the major league level because of how much Tampa Bay platoons their guys, and especially with him being blocked at second base right now by Brandon Lau. In just a minute, let's get to the fifth guy on the list and then talk about some of the recent draftees who could jump into this. We'll do that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. Oh boy, it is time to have the Cole Young conversation. Welcome back to Locked On MLB Prospects. This is obviously the third segment going through the top second base prospects in minor league baseball, the winter 2023 update. And if you are not familiar with Cole Young of the Seattle Mariners, it is time for you to be familiar with Cole Young of the Seattle Mariners. First rounder in 2022 out of high school, was taken, I think, like 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there. But spent his time last year between Modesto, he was a Modesto nut, and Everett with the Aqua Sox. Total combined slash line, 277, 399, 449. 11 home runs, 54 extra base hits, 88 walks to 90 strikeouts, and 22 of 32 on stolen bases. Cole Young, for me, I can't speak for everybody, obviously. For me, I think I've moved him above Harry Ford in the prospect rankings and for this organization. And that's nothing against Harry Ford. I just really have enjoyed watching Cole Young. And I mean, they sent him to single A after the draft. It was very good. From what I understand, that he has done a lot of work physically on adding strength to add power. But it's something where, as a lefty, it is very hard to get one over on Cole Young, right? It feels like he can handle most everything. He can handle really good spin. He can handle velocity. He's not going to chase a ton. And if you throw a mistake, he's going to crush it, right? I wouldn't quite call him a 70 grade hitter. He's probably, if you could give a half grade, he's probably 65. A lot of folks don't like doing that, so 60, that's fine. The reason he falls down a little bit on this list is because the power ceiling, I don't quite know. It feels like it's going to be 15, maybe 20 home run power, and that's a little bit behind some of the other guys like a Mead, what these other guys might be able to do. He is also young. He turned 20 in late July, so he's 20 years old now. This was his age 19 season. But just very impressive to watch Cole Young. It is a line drive stroke. He can play the entire field. It's not a gap-to-gap thing. It is a foul pole to foul pole thing. I've seen him in batting practices and things like that, absolutely ripping balls. The thing for me is the power ceiling. Some of it's going to be physical development, right? That happens. These guys are going to have to physically develop as they get older. The thing for me is a lot of it's going to be the pitch recognition, and if he can somehow get even better on identifying a pitch that is drivable and then getting pure contact on it. It feels like he's already very good at getting the best possible contact quality out of most pitches that he hits. I don't have the StatCast data for exactly what he's done. High A is not publicly available, but it is the pitch recognition is good. The patience is good. And I think that's going to be the route to his power ceiling, more so than just how much muscle can he add. I do think that defensively, the arm is good enough where he could stick it short. The question's going to be, as he gets bigger, as he gets heavier, losing speed, he's above average now. Again, he stole 22 bases in 32 tries, but when you go back and you watch some of those stolen bases, I watched a montage of the attempts. It's not bad jumps. It's the overall speed, right? And so because of that, it feels like he's not, like he's at risk of losing enough speed where he's not going to be a good enough defender to hold off somebody better. I think that's the reason he'll be a second baseman. Not because he can't play short. He could get by at short, but because you will have somebody in the system that is a better shortstop than him, so you will move him to second base. But tons of fun to watch Cole Young. You got to watch him when you have a chance. It is a very good hit tool, and very excited to see what he can do in 2024. I'm curious where they send him in 24. Okay, he got 48 games in Everett, batted .292. .292 with a .404 on base and .479 slugs. Struck out 38 times in 48 games, walked 34 times in 48 games. Walked almost as much as he struck out, and both of those was obviously less than the number of games he played. It's one of the little easy things that we look at there. I'm curious to see where they send him. Obviously, Everett makes sense to send him back there, but with all of the guys they have behind him that'll be in either Modesto or Everett, they could be aggressive and throw him straight into Arkansas at age 20. And if they do, and he picks up on that, he could potentially be an option in spring training in 2025. He feels like he's that advanced as a hitter. Talking about guys that are advanced as hitters who were in consideration for the back part of this, if I were to stick this out into 10 total players, you probably would have more of these guys in here. But Tommy Troy, Matt Shaw, out of the most recent draft, both of them questions about where they're going to play. So it's one of the reasons why, we're waiting to see what they do in full season ball. Where are they going to play? But they're both candidates for this list. Colt Emerson is another guy in this organization who, listed as a shortstop, is going to be a second baseman. He was committed to Auburn University. As well, a lot of you already know, Auburn University, the baseball program, I know a lot of people over there. I've written about them. I've covered them extensively. And if he were to make it on campus, so if he were to not get drafted or decline to sign and go to campus, he would have been moved to second base his freshman year. So it's not like he's listed at shortstop. That's what he played a lot after the draft. He is destined to be a second baseman. He was going to be a second baseman in college if he got there. He is going to be a second baseman. A lot of his scouting reports, his write-ups before the draft, they talked about he was going to be a second baseman. The arm strength, some people think the arm strength is good enough for him to kick out to third. I really still think it's going to be second base. But he had a very good post-draft exposure. His 24-game regular season sample, which I think 2/3 of that was with Modesto and only 8 games was with the Complex League. He batted like .374 with a on base of almost .500. Even in Modesto, he batted .302 with a .436 on base. Small sample size, 16 games, I know, but still very advanced hitter. And so you put him at second base. I legitimately think that he could probably hold his own in Everett to open 2024, in high A Everett to open 2024. Now, to do that, you probably have to either keep Cole Young at shortstop or move Cole Young to Arkansas. But it's a really good problem for the Mariners to have. And we're going to talk more about the Mariners infield, what they do with some of these young guys on Friday, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you've got questions for us, mailbag is on Monday. Show ideas, segment ideas, tons of ways to get them to us. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, Discord, subtext. It's all in the episode description. It's all in the show notes. We have a link tree down there. Until tomorrow's show, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.